Good morning, all. My name is Jerry Rothkoff. I'm managing attorney of Rothkoff Law Group, an elder care law firm located in both Pennsylvania and New Jersey, serving seniors and their caregiver loved ones in both states. We are privileged to have Dr. Jim Wright with us today in our continuing series, Who's Who of the Front Lines of Long-Term Care. And we're trying to meet with and hear from individuals who have been very prominent in advocacy related to COVID and long-term care issues. So Dr. Wright, welcome. Dr. Wright is a medical director of several area Richmond, Virginia nursing homes. And he is specifically, he is a current medical director of one of Canterbury Nursing Home, which was prominent in the national news as one of the first nursing homes after the nursing home in Kirkland, Washington, to really face dire consequences related to its resident population who contracted COVID. So Dr. Wright, welcome. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you.
It's good to be here.
And let's talk about so our audience will understand what your role is as a medical director of area nursing homes. What's your daily job duties as the medical director?
Yeah, good question. So as any other medical director, I'm in charge of procedures, protocols, and delivery of care in area nursing homes, as you said, here in Richmond. And generally that includes a close relationship with our administrator, director of nursing. And we meet on a regular basis, usually monthly or sometimes quarterly, and go over how are things going, infection rates and inspections and those kind of things, regulatory issues, relationships with our state regulatory bodies and things like that. That's my main duty as a medical director. However, I also serve as the primary attending at all of those facilities as well. So even though I enjoy my medical director duties, my main love is being a physician and caring for the elderly in those facilities of which I'm medical director.
Let's talk about your experience as a medical director in your Richmond area nursing homes over the past close to 4 months by now. You have been in national interviews. I think I saw an interview with ABC News from April that about your experience, and I know you've been interviewed by the Washington Post, as well as some local publications and possibly others that I'm not aware of. So you've been a prominent speaker about your experience, and I would love our audience to hear from you. Let's talk about from March into April and May. Can you talk about some of what your experience has been and some of the issues that you faced?
Sure, yeah. So early on, we were having meetings when we first saw that COVID was in the North America. I think it started in Canada, and then it started moving down from the north. Once COVID showed up in Washington, D.C., we knew we were going to be facing a severe health crisis, the likes of which we had never seen. So we had regular meetings preparing, assessing our preparedness, actually, finding out that we really did not have the protective equipment that we needed, the masks, the gloves. Well, we had gloves, but that was about it. No masks, or not enough masks, not enough gowns. And so we started amassing our supplies. In preparedness, we started talking about what we would do if we had a suspected case. Where would they go? How would we isolate them? What about testing? That was early in March. Testing was not available. If you did do some testing, it was very strictly regulated by the state. We actually had to do a series of tests before we could even start doing coronavirus testing back then. So your results for a person under suspicion for coronavirus would take up to a week and a half to return. And so we were dealing with all of these restrictions and shortcomings, figuring out how we were going to respond. And unfortunately, our first case was March 14th. And that was the first, essentially the first case in the Richmond area. It was a resident that shared a room with two other residents, unfortunately. And so we were immediately faced with following through on the plans that we had made for isolation, quarantine, setting aside a wing of our facility to move these folks into. But the virus, it was one step, two steps, or many steps ahead of us. Everything that we did just revealed more infection, more people coming down with the virus. And it was all we could do just to triage patients, send to the hospital, try to provide comfort to those patients that were either chose not to go to the hospital or were simply succumbing so fast they would be dead before the ambulance came. It was, you know, I would have to say the most challenging experience of my life as a medical director, but also as a physician and as a human being. I mean, I had been primary care attending for these patients for years, sometimes for 10 years, as long as I had been at the facility. And they had looked to me as their caregiver, the person that would help them out of medical issues and sometimes other issues as well. And this was something that I was powerless to treat. And it was this sense of frustration and powerlessness that I've never faced before in my 25 years of practice.
So it sounds like it was a case of unavoidability. You knew it was coming, and you were powerless to change the results.
I was powerless. Yeah, it was like you were watching a tidal wave coming. So you can go to the high ground as quickly as you can and get whatever supplies you need, but in the end, there was nothing that we could do to change the tide.
And with all your training over the years, it must have been quite frustrating to experience something that clearly you've never experienced before. But hopefully, and this is where I think I would like to have the discussion go now, is that let's talk about some good that can potentially come out of a terrible tragedy. I mean, all around.
Right. Well,
so let's talk about what you've learned, and maybe not tomorrow, but whether it's the next epidemic that is going to be COVID-24, 25, whatever the case may be, over the years, the next unavoidable virus that comes along somehow, some way, worldwide. Let's talk about how we can avoid.
Right.
And, you know, because maybe if we keep doing the same thing regarding long-term care and how we house our seniors, I would argue that that may meet the legal definition of the term insanity.
Right. Exactly. Doing the same thing and expecting different results.
Right. So what have you learned?
Right.
And, you know, where do we go from here? And what do you think needs to be changed the way we treat our seniors?
Well, Jerry, I think, you know, a lot of my fellow medical directors and I were not surprised at the way coronavirus spread through facilities. Any of us that have been working in this business long enough know that the way we treat our elders is a situation that is simply ripe for an uncontrolled infectious disease. And it's simple. It really comes down to how we try to warehouse our elders in small spaces. And not only that, but they have to share spaces with other residents. So in my facility, just like a lot of other publicly funded facilities, we have people sharing rooms. We have people sharing living space with two other people. So we have 3 people rooms. And like I said, that was actually, you know, as fate would have it, that's where our COVID outbreak began. There is no way to prevent the spread of a disease like this if we continue to have our elders sharing rooms. So if there's one, and I'm going to say it's simple because it's straightforward. I realize it's financially challenging for the owners of these nursing homes, but if there's one simple thing we can do, it is giving our elders a room of their own. And I think that is something we can all gather around, realizing that, hey, if you've lived through the Depression, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam War, if you're a veteran, if you're a human being, you simply deserve some type of ownership, some type of privacy. And if you can own your space instead of having to share it with somebody else, it's not only a very human need, it's a matter of public health at this point. So I would be in favor of any kind of legislation that would push for the end to shared rooms in any nursing home. I think we're done with that because coronavirus is really the first, it's not even the first, but it's one of many, and it won't be the last infectious disease issues that we're going to have to deal with. So if you think about what our government has recommended, the CDC has recommended as far as slowing down the spread of coronavirus, it all has to do with isolation, self-quarantine, spacing yourself out from other people, and also getting outside, right? The spread of coronavirus is much attenuated when you are outside. Our seniors don't have the freedom, they don't have the basic rights of what the rest of us have. So they don't have the right to self-isolation. They don't have the right to access to substantial amounts of outdoor space. And these things add up to a higher death rate for the people that are most susceptible to this virus. So I think your point about the definition of insanity, not only if we expect this not to happen again in the future and don't make these changes, I think we truly we've lost our way, not only our sanity, but our moral compass as a nation. But the whole concept of putting frail elders into shared rooms to begin with is insanity of itself. I mean, we deal with this insanity. I deal with this as a geriatrician. My fellow medical directors deal with this every day. What are we thinking? Do they not deserve a little bit of privacy? Do they not deserve the ability to avoid potentially life-threatening, life-ending diseases because we simply don't want to ante up the money to give them the privacy that they deserve? So there's a lot of insanity going around in the nursing home industry.
Right, and there's a lot of shared insanity, and
right.
But when I read, how are you gearing up for the second wave, as it's called? Oh, well, we'll get proper PPE. We're going to test our employees weekly. That's all a good start. But it sounds like what you're saying is that's not enough. We need to do more. And I think I think you would agree why did this occur? There's not one reason why this occurred. And the nursing home industry has been vilified. With some degree, should they take blame? Yes, I think they should. But I would also argue it's shared blame.
Right.
Should they be vilified the way what they have been? Probably not, but they do have a role to play in this.
Right. They're really an outgrowth of our society, right? I mean, our society really devalues dependency, it devalues frailty, it devalues people that no longer contribute to society. So we are, because we're America, we are very intent on remaining a land of independence, and productivity seems to be the marker of our worth. And so in a society like this, obviously, the flip side of an emphasis on productivity and independence is devaluation of human life when you are no longer productive and no longer independent. And so the nursing homes aren't even the primary villains in this tragedy. The primary villains are us. The primary villains are the people like me and you and my fellow Americans who are okay with warehousing elders. They're okay with shutting them out of society. They're okay with a death rate that is 10 times the rest of the populations because they simply do not value these elders. So it's a horrible thing to think that we're part of a society like this, but it's true. So if this should do anything, and I certainly hope it does, it should shake all of us to our core and help us re-examine how we fund healthcare for everyone, for the poor, the disadvantaged, the disenfranchised, the people with dementia, and the elderly and debilitated. It's, we need to step up to our responsibilities to the rest of our fellow citizens.
So I guess the question then becomes, how do we go about reforming a broken long-term care system that, as you said, emphasizes the warehouse institutional mentality?
Mm-hmm.
I know you have some ideas about how we can go about that important reformation that you have emphasized.
Yep.
And can you touch upon that briefly?
Would love to. Yeah.
And I know that the goal is to go into much more detail in August when we bring you back in more of a town hall style format. We'll talk at length about the philosophy about how to accomplish that important task. But can you just touch briefly about what your thoughts about how to accomplish those the important reformation is?
Thank you. Yeah. So, Jerry, as you know, there is a better way out there, and other countries have done it. Most of those countries do contribute more towards the care. Well, they all contribute more towards the care of our elders. If you look at the comparison of the United States with other industrialized countries, the percentage of GDP that we contribute towards elder care is a fraction of what every other industrialized country contributes. So, it really starts with a national will to fix the problem with increased funding. But it comes down to much more than funding. So my idea, something that I share with a small group of professionals here in Richmond, is called homecoming. And you can see our concept on our website, homecomingrva.com. RVA is Richmond, Virginia. So homecomingrva.com. That is a summary of what we're planning to do here in Richmond. It's taking some of the ideas from the granddaddy of what we call memory villages in Amsterdam, Hogevik, and what we propose is to not only focus on better housing for our elders, but what we are aiming to do is to reproduce a world for our elders, a world where their basic humanity is identified, where their worth is identified, and it's identified through resources. It's identified through private living in small homes, similar to the greenhouse project. That's something that's well established here in the States. But more than that, what we want is to restart a reintegration with society. So most of our elders, once they're too debilitated to live alone, they end up in these warehouses. They're really more like ghettos because no one comes out when they go in there, and really no one goes into them. We want to reintegrate our elders with society. So we propose to have a campus in Richmond, about a 15 to 20 acre campus of small home living for elders, probably about 100 to 120 spaces gathered around a central campus or a town square. This town square would have a market, it would have a cafe, it would have a fountain, a gathering place for our elders to form community with themselves. And then it would have retail space that would help to attract people from the outside community, a daycare center, a brewery, which I'm very fond of. I'd like to have people come in and just hang out with our elders. And then perhaps a coffee shop, someplace where people who normally would not be associated with long-term care would want to get reintroduced to our elders. And then the third component of our principles, so that's the recognition of their worth and their humanity, despite the fact that they're no longer producing or contributing to society, reintegration with community. The third, which is something that's sorely missing in our nursing homes, is unfettered access to substantial outdoor space. And outdoor space reintroduces a number of things into the life of our elders. So like we talked about, it reintroduces health. So it allows elders to be outside where the spread of infectious disease is much less. But it also gives them some agency. It gives them decision making. So the unfettered access, so within limits, within a secure environment, monitored, I want my elders, the ones living in my community, to be able to walk out of their door and come up with their own pathway, their own schedule. Do they want to explore the woods? Do they want to get away from this facility? Or do they want to hang out in the town square in the cafe? Do they need to go shopping for lunch? Do they need to we're going to have a barnyard. Do they need to go to the barnyard and collect eggs for breakfast? I want them to have decision making. And in addition to that, outdoor space, especially for active residents, it simply gives them worthwhile vocation. So once you have trees, you always have work to do, right? Or if you have a garden, you have something worthwhile to do. I don't want my elders to be participating in activities as much as I want them to be participating in real vocation. And that reintroduces another very big human element, and that is the ability to be in charge of something, the ability to be a caregiver instead of just a recipient. And so those three elements, community reintegration, the recognition of the value of life, and unfettered access to outdoor space. My role, my goal in all of this is to rehumanize our elders, because everything that happens in a typical long-term care setting dehumanizes. Once you take away choice, once you take away freedom, once you take away privacy, all of these elements dehumanize. And so we need to reintroduce a concept like this, not just because it's someplace I would like to live in if I was ever debilitated, not just because it seems like a neat idea. My drive goes to a philosophical, theological basis that all humans have certain rights, and those rights are not being afforded them in the current status. So, when you think about it, my view on how we treat our elders is that this is really one of the unspoken, unheard of civil rights crises of our generation, the dehumanizing of our elders. So it's really an attempt to rehumanize.
Right, and it's fascinating. I commend you for what you're attempting to do. You're a man after my own heart, as we have previously discussed. Everything you said, I 100% agree with. But this is going to be a heavy lift.
Oh, yeah.
There's no doubt about it, for a variety of reasons. And the number one reason, I would argue, and as you said, society failed our seniors. And we're included in that, as you said.
Right.
So until society puts this as one of the important priorities, just like, Medicare for all is out there and universal health insurance, we have to look at this as a national priority for a variety of reasons. The increased level of Alzheimer's and dementia over the next many years, and the cost of care, in addition to the actual propensity to develop viruses, deadly viruses. All of that needs to be a national priority. So we're going to have you kindly come back in a much longer format in August, and we're going to get into some of these. How are we going to accomplish this? And this vision that you have, because we all agree we must do better. The question is, how do we move forward as a country to make this a national priority, where, as opposed to, coronavirus is a national priority at the moment.
Right.
Of course, when that's going to drop off, and then we're going to go. We can't go back to same old, and we're going to talk about how to prevent that moving forward.
Exactly.
So
that is what I do as a medical director every day. The phrase we use is root cause analysis in the nursing home industry. What is the root cause of this high death rate, this high mortality rate for our elders? And really the root cause is that we don't care about our elders, not enough.
And COVID is not the root cause of the breakdown in our long-term care system.
Right.
COVID simply exposed the pre-existing wound.
Exactly.
And the question is, we can't go back and just put a Band-Aid on it, that wound.
Not if I can help it, that's for sure.
Yeah, so Dr. Wright, thank you so much for your fascinating take, and I'm glad things have calmed down at your Richmond area nursing homes.
They certainly
and
have.
We look forward to hearing more insightful comments in August about what your thoughts are for the future of long-term care. So thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for being on the front lines, and we look forward to further conversations with you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Jerry. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Thank you.